A woman enters a room full of men, opens a sealed jar containing a whole year's worth of salary, and pours the contents over the head of a dying man. The house is immediately filled with the scent. It penetrates the walls, the cushions, and the clothing of those lounging at the table, and it doesn't go away for days. When those same folks witness this man being detained, tried, some of them might still have carried the perfume's aroma on their skin after being beaten and nailed on a cross later that week. The majority of individuals consider this tale to be a pleasant experience. A loyal woman gives generously. Jesus stands up for her when some people protest. We typically hear that version. However, if you take a moment to examine what she truly poured forth, the source of that scent, and the meaning of the word in the you learn that this was not an impulsive gesture of affection by looking at the original language and what Jesus said about it in the same breath. It was among the most theologically significant events in the entirety of the gospel. Not one of the 12 disciples had the guts or the wisdom to undertake what this woman did. Jesus said that she would be remembered everywhere the good news is broadcast as a result. We will thus go for a walk today. The way the authors of the gospel intended for us to interpret this situation. We will examine the scent itself, its cost, the plant from whence it originated, and the historical significance of applying oil to someone's head. By the time it's all over, you'll see why Jesus saw this as much more than a gift. She might not have fully understood what she was saying, but he accepted it as a prophecy. Since the setting is doing this, let's start there. More labor than most people are aware of. Then 6 days, John 12, provides the most lucid account. According to John, Jesus visited Bethany prior to the Passover and revived Lazarus from the grave. Martha served him the dinner they had prepared. However, Lazarus was among those seated at the table alongside him. Take a moment to sit with that. Lazarus is seated at the table. A male who was confined in a tomb for 4 days, wrapped in a grave and buried, is now relaxing and enjoying dinner. Each person in the room has personally witnessed death being undone. And a lady chooses to prepare Jesus for his own death in that room full of living examples of Jesus' power over death. Mary is her name. This is Mary of Bethany, Lazarus and Martha's sister. John names her bluntly. Here we must be truthful, because this channel is more concerned with getting the material correct than with repeating what everyone believes. The Western Church has a centuries-old custom that combines this Mary with Mary Magdalene and the immoral woman from Luke 7, as if they were all one person. It is not stated in the Bible that the woman in Luke. Early in his ministry, Jesus is anointed in Galilee, in the home of a Pharisee in chapter 7, where he is depicted as a sinner. That is a different scene in a different location at a different time. It is treated as a distinct event in the most meticulous reading of the Gospels. No one ever refers to Mary of Bethany as a sinful woman. While her sister labored in the kitchen, she was the one who knelt at Jesus' feet to learn. We will therefore let Mary to be who the text describes her to be, and no more since the exaggeration is unnecessary for the true story. It has sufficient power on its own. The perfume now. The details are important, and Mark and Matthew both explain it in the same way. And being in Bethany, at the house of Simon the leper, states Mark 14:3. While he was seated at the table, a woman arrived with an alabaster flask filled with expensive spikenard oil. After that, she shattered the flask and doused his head with it. According to John, there was a pound of it. The key to unlocking the entire scene is that word spikenard. So let's take a closer look. Nardos pistic is the Greek expression. The plant Nardostosage jamonsi is used to make the perfume known as nard or spikenard. This is the section that explains why the price is so high. It doesn't grow any place close to Israel. It rises high.
thousands of miles away in the Himalayan mountains in what is now India and Nepal. A single jar of pure nard had to be harvested from a hillside on the opposite side of the world, processed into oil, carefully sealed to prevent the smell from escaping, then transported by caravan and ship across deserts and trade routes in order to reach a village outside of Jerusalem. Each additional mire to the price. It was among the most costly drugs a person could possess by the time it arrived at a Bethany residence. You didn't buy this on a whim. A jar like this was inherited by most households. It was the type of riches that was passed down and stored, the prehistoric equivalent of a bottle of life savings. Additionally, there is a term associated with it that academics have been debating for a very long time. The word is pistic. If you interpret it as a common Greek term, it signifies loyal, sincere, or pure. Your Bible most likely reads pure nard because of this. However, other academics believe it was a technical phrase used in the perfume industry, and some have proposed that it indicates the nard is liquid, while others believe it might have been a regional term. To tell the truth, there is disagreement among the experts on this point. The most likely connotation, and the most common translation, is that it designates the nard as authentic and pure. To put it another way, this was not a less expensive blend, cut-right filler. It was the actual thing at its strongest. And rather than making the picture weaker, being honest about the ambiguity really makes it stronger. Because every reading agrees on this, regardless of the exact subtlety. It was the world's most valuable scent in its purest, finest, and most valuable form. This is where the number ends up. Some in the room put a price on it when they object. Why was this fragrant oil wasted? Mark records them asking. Because it could have been sold for less than 300 denarii and donated to the underprivileged. In Matthew 20, Jesus relates a parable about a landowner who employs laborers for his vineyard. To comprehend that, you must first grasp what a denarius was and the agreed-upon salary for a complete. 1 denarius is a day of labor. 1 denarius, 1 workday. Thus, 300 days of labor equal 300 denarius. If you remove the Sabbaths, you're looking at about a working man's entire year's worth of earnings spilled out onto the floor in a single motion, with one person's head, feet, and hair disappearing in a matter of seconds. Imagine how it would feel to watch that. Imagine someone stealing all of your earnings for a whole year in an. Imagine spilling money down the ground in front of you and then hearing that it was the appropriate thing to do. That's the tension in this room, and Jesus is going to settle it in a way that no one anticipated. Do me a favor if this is already making it easier for you to perceive this scene with fresh eyes. Leave a comment below and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps more people locate these resources, even if it's just one word. Additionally, we are beginning. Let's now address the two narratives, because if you pay close attention, you will see that Mark and Matthew claim that she poured oil on his head. John claims that she used her hair to wipe and anoint his feet. And occasionally, people draw attention to that and claim that it is contradictory. It isn't. The easiest and most logical interpretation is that she did both. She started at his head, the manner in which a monarch would be anointed. The scent trickled down, and she proceeded to his feet, the manner in which a person would be honored in the utmost humility. She used her own hair to wipe them. Both details are accurate. This is what gives it its beauty. Every gospel author kept the portion of the gesture that conveyed the message he wanted you to understand. The complete picture of what Mary truly achieved is shown when you combine the two. She crowned him, and she buried him in the same action. Allow me to clarify what I mean when I say crowned, since most folks completely overlook this portion. Pouring oil on someone's head was not a random act of generosity in the Old Testament era. It was a ritual. It was the process of designating someone for a holy position. 1 Samuel 16 states that after Samuel selected David to be king, then Samuel took the horn of oil. David was anointed with oil among his brothers, and the Lord's Spirit descended upon him from that day on. That's how monarchs were created. Priests were consecrated in this manner. The person was marked, selected, and commissioned after oil was applied on their head. Messiah is the Hebrew term for the recipient of that oil. In English, we refer to it as Messiah. Additionally, that term becomes Christos when translated into Greek. We refer to it as Christ. Do you sense how heavy that is? Jesus' most colloquial title, the word we mindlessly affix to his name 1,000 times. Christ literally translates to the anointed one. It refers to the person whose head was covered in oil. Crowds have chanted it for 3 years. Demons had admitted it. It had been stated by Peter. However, no one has ever done it in reality. The ceremony had been performed by no one. No one had applied oil to the head of the Messiah to fulfill the promise made in the title. Until a woman who had no formal position, no priestly qualifications, and no position in the religious system entered Bethany and accomplished the one thing that the word Christ had been waiting for. The anointed one was anointed by her. While the men who referred to him as Messiah gathered around and grumbled about the expense, she took the title literally. The first concealed layer is that